Now come back. Oh. Now make we look how we fit work with functions for JavaScript. Wetin be functions, how we fit run am, how you go even take dey help us dey write better code. Function na just block of code wey be say if we wan dey do something over and over, na that time we go dey use function. So make we say we wan create a function for here now. We fit say we wan create a function, and this function we wan call am add. So we say add, and then this function, when you write the name of the function, you come write parentheses. Once you write parentheses for here, you come write your blocks. Your blocks na the curly brace. So anything wey dey live inside this block, inside this curly brace here, na im we dey call block. Any code inside here, na im dey inside this function. E go dey only affect the scope. Wetin I mean by scope? I mean say we get the local scope and we get the global scope. The local scope just means say e go dey inside this function for here. And the global scope just means say the code wey we dey write or the variables wey we dey define, e dey outside this function for here. So if I say I wan do let x equals to 10, and then make we say this make we do another x equals to 20. So the difference be say this code wey dey here, e go dey affect only here. E go dey affect this whole code, this whole file wey dey here. E go dey affect am. But the one wey dey this x for here, e dey only affect this add function. So make I close this off first, and then make we give some space, and then make we close this one off with semicolon. So now as we don get this code like this, make we try console log am. How we go take call our function? Our function needs to be called with the name of the function. Meaning say we go need call am like this. We fit say add, and as we don call am add, you go need to add your parentheses for here. So this parentheses wey we go add, once we call am, e go help us call the function. So how we go take know which value dey inside this x wey we don define for here? We go need to return the value. So for JavaScript, you go need the return keyword wey dey always work inside a function. So you go say return, and then wetin we wan return na x. And now you see say if we console log this value out, everything go work the same. How we go take check am? Make we say we wan do console.log, log, and then we go just wrap am inside parentheses for there. And you see say the answer now, this add don dey give us 20. Well, as you write am say we just dey define these two variables, why be say e dey give us this x as 20? So make we say x for here na 20, and then make we console log the other x. So make we say console.log, and then make we log x. You see say x for this global scope, it will give us this answer. But if we console log am for inside even this our function, for example, if I say console log x, instead of return, I could just say I want console log x, which will give me 20. If I say make we just come out this console log for here, you see say it will give us 20. So while this x dey here, now 20 inside this function, this x wey dey here, you know, going to affect this variable wey dey here, this x variable wey dey here. Now different behaviors, now different values they get in the computer. So always remember as you do your global and your local variables. Make we start to return the values again. All right, make this a sum, a full function. So we'll say, okay, this function we will get here as x and y and z and all. Make we say we want give them parameters. What do I mean by parameters? I just mean say we want give them attributes, or we want give them things that will help them to work correctly. So already this add function when we make for here, we want make it help us say add, right? We want make it help us say add number. So if we say we get another variable, make we name this instead of x, you see we get error because now global variable the name for them. And if we say okay, this x and y, we want make this add taking two values. So if you say the first parameter what we want now x, and the other parameter what we want now y. Now this x and y could be anything where we want. Okay, if you say first, and then if you say second. If you say okay, you want multiply this first plus second, you will say first times second, for example. Now anytime when we pass this value inside, you say we get this none, don't worry about that. So anytime we call this function now, what we do be say, we talk say we want add first value and a second value. And whatever that second value be, make it just return us this expression for here. Say first times the second will be the result we define. So make we try and get them. So if we say we want the first value and then we want pass in x, for example, which is 10, and then the second parameter will go do comma, and then we want pass in the second argument we want for here, we can say we want passing y. And now when we do like that, it go do 10 times 20. If we want to change the value to something else, if you just say, okay, make we change these values to 50, and make we change this go be 10 times 50. This go be 10 times 50, and if we say make we change this to 200, it go be 200 times 50. That's not the amount we go get for there, and that's so we go to run this function as many times as we want. Likewise, if we say we want even, I say add, I call this add. We're gonna know verse. I call this add, but I go to multiply, which is fine. So we can say we want to do plus. Now this plus we get for here, it go to help us the plus everything. So the first number plus second number, it go to plus and the plus and the plus and. So if we say 120 and 110 rather, just like before, and we want 20, it going to work exactly the same. So anytime we want call the function, we go call them add. You go to do add. It going to give us the function. It going to call itself every time. It going to call. Now so we they run the function. Just remember, as also say whatever value where we add for here, now so we go to return up for there. So if you want function like this one, where we say it just the inside the own function, the variables just the inside the function. If you just carry and come here, so make we create a subtract. You want to create a function, and this function you want to say subtract. This subtract function, we will add the block, and then we will define in values for here. So if you just say we want to make let a b inside this a and b, make we close down, and then inside this a and b, what we want to be say we want return the value. So we go for say we want return a minus b. So what we do for here, we say we return these values, but because say we no pass them any argument, remember, because say we no pass them argument like this first and second, it could just define the variables for here. So whatever variable we pass for here, you fit name them like that. So if you say a go day equals to 20, b go day equals to 4, for example. So anytime when we call this subtract function, just remember say it go to help us they do the calculation of a and b. Make a call and let instead, so that people don't get confused. Let b equals 4 and let close this. So anytime we call it like this, just know say this a and b, it they inside this subtract function only. It they only work for inside here. You know they work for this add, you know they work for the global scope. But because we they call it like that for inside this subtract function where they where we just make this our custom function. Now there we feel run them like that. So make we see the results if we console log out. Make we clear this console log. Make we just call subtract first. So and then make we call them out as a function, and then make we wrap them inside console log statement. So we say now say console.log and then pass that in. So anytime when we pass that function, we they call them like this, say, oh, this function, you get your own variable of a and b, and every time you go to return minus a and minus b. So anytime they call them, you're going to give us a and b, a and b, a and b. If you try pass function and pass any number or any method inside, you know go work. You see, if you pass any number inside, you know go work. If you say, okay, oh, make we no draw like that, make we try and make a more dynamic like the first one, then that time you can say, okay, now this function, it expect a and it expect b. So if I come here and I say now this subtract, I want passing 20, and then the second parameter I want passing at 4. Make we clean this code again, and then make we clean this one just like before. They say now this subtract, it only give me this a and this b. So if you call them now again at 16, make them 40, and make them 10. They say now we get 30, and this will be any amount of number we want. So like this, we don't create an additional function, and we don't even create subtraction function for here like this. Subtract function. Actually, make I rename them to sub instead of subtract. So say sub because it's a very short thing. Now, you get other ways where we even write this function, and then the way we go to write them sometimes for our code. You go to see people they use this syntax. They call it the arrow function for here. I don't go into depth of arrow function because it get as it be, but I go give you a link when I read more. But it will take time to understand, but just try bear with me. Make we try rewrite these functions where we did here. Make we try write them as arrow functions. So make we say we want to do the first function. So the first function we want to do now the add function, right? So make we say add. So go say parenthesis equals to, and then we'll say greater than. Now this arrow, now in the trigger the arrow function. So now as you don't write that arrow, we'll come now put our blocks for here. Then our curly brace. Now inside this curly brace, now here we can write what we want to do for inside the curly brace. So we'll say we want return first plus second, sorry. Always they remember to the add your parameter. So we can say first and second. As we don't do like this, JavaScript doesn't say we don't write a function. So we go say const or a variable, since the function we go say const, we dey equals to a fat arrow function. So now they say the error where we get before, it don't go. And make we just rename them to add2. Make we clean the subs for now. add, and then I could just pass in the parameters what I want. So which parameter I want? Like we say we want X and we want Y. And now if I console log out, CLG, and place that in there, if you see say now we don't get the value. So 10, that's my X plus Y, which are 20, we they get 30 for there. And then how we they get this result for here for this add 2. But this not add 1, sorry. So make we duplicate them and then make we say add 2, and this is say we get the exact same result. So this function here and this function here, they do the exact same thing. So why we go even want to write them like this? Well done now, because if we write it like this, one of the nicest things we say, we can even make our code smaller. So you see say this one just takes like what, 3 lines of code. As you take 3 lines of code, we can even write them without this return keyword. So I could just say, since it's a small function, I could just say first, second, instead of doing that, make it clean every other thing. And after that arrow, make it just return first and second. And you see say it will work the exact same way. So we write this function in just one line, whereas with the other one, we're going to write more and more and more and all those kinds of things. But remember, if you pass one line, meaning say if you pass this return statement and you want to do like create a variable, you want to add another function, you want to do loop and all that, at that time you're going to need to write them inside the local block scope. Then you'll come put your braces for here, and another one will come give us the local block scope. But because we say we don't write return, that's why we get undefined. So once you put the return keyword, it will return the value of what we define for here, which now this first plus second will be defined for here. So make we try and do the same again. And if we try even do the same process for the subtract, because it's saying not the same. So pause the video, try do the subtraction or subtract 2 as your own. So if you don't forget, as I take do make we try do as an arrow function again. So we go say, I could just say, make I duplicate this code, and then we could just say sub 2, change the name to sub 2, and now we could just do, instead of first and second, we could just do A and B as you did this one for here, right? So we just say A, and we could change this to B, and then we could just change this to A again, and we could change this to B. So now, if we call this sub function, sub to 100, and make I sub 50, because you say, it don't they give me plus that. So make we do minus, sorry. If we come out the return keyword and the brace, since now simple statement we try and make for there. So we could just return A and B, and just this one line of code, now they give us the same results. But for now, that's all we need to learn. I will see you now for the next video. Thank you.